Hello everyone! We recently decided to divide our big Vanda type orchid because it just looked so big and cumbersome in the window. And for that, of course, we needed another pot for the division. Big net pots like this are really hard to find, so we just decided to use the more traditional wood baskets. And who sells those? Orchid stores, of course. We still had a gift card from Schwerter from an orchid we got mislabeled a few years ago. And this made it the perfect excuse, the perfect reason, to make a good old-fashioned orchid haul. I always tell myself I do so very few of these online orders, I might as well take advantage of the shipping price and get a lot of the orchids I've been eyeing. And that's how you end up with a gigantic box filled with orchids, like this. So buckle up for a long video and let's get right into the box. The first orchid we got out was this tiny thing in a ceramic mount. Believe it or not, this orchid is actually flowering size, as you can tell by the dried up flower spikes. Unfortunately, the plant itself looks really dehydrated. There was a heat wave here in Europe when these shipped, and I think the ceramic mount doesn't really help much with keeping them hydrated. It did look much better after being watered overnight, and we'll see that with a lot of these plants. I have really been enjoying the world of miniature orchids lately. I just find them adorable. A few years ago I thought most of them had to be grown in terrariums, but right now I have quite a few that do just fine in pots. So I wanted to get some more from Schwerter's vast catalog, and this was one of them. I really like the fact that the tiny flowers that it has are almost see-through. As with all lesser-known species, finding the care for this orchid is just a nightmare. It's still better than those that you can't find any information at all, but you still get jerked around a lot. Really hard to keep, really good for beginners, must be mounted, can be grown in pots. So I was left not knowing what to do. Sure, I could keep it mounted, but something about how thin these leaves are makes me think it could dehydrate very easily if the ambient humidity isn't perfect. So I decided to just pot it in some small bark. If I say that I bought this orchid that is mostly grown mounted to pot it up as an experiment instead of calling it a plain bad decision, does it make it better? Yeah, let's say that. This is why I'm doing this. It's for science. Next I pulled out a bundle that seemed too big and too heavy for what I thought I ordered. So it's another ceramic mount with a Gastrochilus that also looks very dehydrated. What happened is, when I ordered this plant, I read online that it's a miniature, and all the other Gastrochilus that we have are tiny. Turns out, this one looks huge comparatively. And this is supposed to be a year away from flowering size, so it's gonna get even bigger. I guess this is one of the risks of online shopping. Not that it's too big for our setup or anything, but I was really surprised by the size of it nonetheless. The plant comes with a K key, and it's weirdly curved on the mount. It seems to have been mounted hanging down, and then it turned itself up towards the light. I am going to be growing this potted, so that process should be interesting. The roots weren't really attached to the ceramic mount, but they are so long. Fortunately, they were also really pliable, so they went into the pot with no problem. I used mainly bark with a little bit of sphagnum. I couldn't find much about this particular orchid, so I went with a generic mix that I've used with other Gastrochilus. The fact that it was all bended ended up not looking too bad. I'm sure it will straighten up itself towards the light soon enough. Speaking of other Gastrochilus we had, this next one is a cross between a Gastrochilus we used to have, the bellinus, and a Holcoglossum, a genus we've never had before. Well, we do have a Vanda crossed with Holcoglossum, but between being cold growers and really big plants, we've never had a Holcoglossum species. Because of that parent, we knew this one could get big. It doesn't look it, but it still has another year of growing until its flowering size, and some plants still grow bigger after that. This one also came a bit dehydrated, but it didn't seem to bounce back as fast as the others after soaking for 24 hours. I like the Holcoglossum growth pattern, all pending and thin-leaved, and hopefully the Gastrochilus parent will keep it smaller. And I'm really curious what the mix of these two flowers is going to look like. I have no idea about the culture of a hybrid like this, so I pretty much aimed for something in between a Vanda and a Gastrochilus and called it a day. After some further research on the internet, I ended up with opposite information than what I expected. Apparently, the Holcoglossum parent is one of the more warm-tolerant ones, and this particular Gastrochilus is more cold-leaning. So either way, intermediate temperatures it is. It's not like I have different climate-controlled rooms anyway. I'm gonna try and grow it in a pot for now. If it really wants to pend, I'll transfer it into a mount in the next tree pot. With two different genuses in one hybrid, I'm again just using plain bark and sphagnum and then see how the plant reacts. Now this next orchid. I usually don't love getting very young seedlings, and this one cost me about the same as all the others, but it's 2 years away from flowering. Still, I just couldn't resist. I've been wanting more Catasetum types, but they are always too young and too expensive everywhere I go. So this time I just gave up and got myself 2 of them. The first Catasetum I ever got was also from Schwerter. It was a project plant from a Facebook orchid group that we all ordered. It was also very young, and it took it 5 years to flower, so I really hope the same doesn't happen to this one. I really like to repot all the orchids I get from nurseries, but with Catasetums and their dormancies, it's really iffy to repot them in the middle of the growing period. I could see that it was very compacted with sphagnum, so the plan was to slowly pull it out and see if I can at least loosen the root ball a little bit, without disturbing the roots. Unfortunately, the repot gods kinda took over me, and I pulled away more than I probably should have. Still, I was able to wrap it up very carefully in very fluffy sphagnum and put it back in the pot with hopefully undamaged roots. This tiny mounted Bulbophyllum is actually called Trias. I think this was a genus that was then absorbed into the Bulbophyllums. I've been getting a lot of these very tiny Bulbophyllums, and they're all doing good, so I had to get more. And these Tria ones have really different looking triangular shaped flowers. I think this will be one of the smelly ones, but I'm pretty sure I can take it. I was glad to see this plastic mount. I've been looking for one of these to mount my Kylochista. And the plan is to put the plant into self-watering. That system has been working great for all my Bulbophyllums. It was fairly easy to remove from the mount, but it was really full of old substrate and old growths that had decomposed, and it could only be removed with tweezers, so that was a chore. I also don't have a small enough self-watering pot, so I'm using the smallest I have. I filled it mostly with bark and placed the orchid in a sphagnum ball on top of the bark. I still made sure to connect the sphagnum ball to the self-watering wick to make sure it gets water. I don't love the way that yellow leaf looks, or those 2 yellowing bulbs, so I'm gonna have to keep my eye on it to see how this evolves. And now we have the other Catasetum type. And this is a very well-known hybrid, the Wine Delight. It does look much bigger than the first one I pulled, but this one is still not flowering size. It's still a year from getting flowers. I still couldn't resist getting this one. The red flowers look so beautiful. Because of these two Catasetum types, I had to read up the difference between Catasetum, Clowesia, Macodes, all those genuses that make the Catasetum type orchids. And there doesn't seem to be much difference in terms of their growth cycle, more on how they flower and how susceptible to rot they can be. This one is even more compacted in the pot than the first one, so I wanted to cut it out of that flimsy pot and at least remove that styrofoam from the bottom. But this one had so many roots wrapped around the whole thing, I just couldn't do anything without damaging it. So I just took it, put it into a bigger pot, added some extra sphagnum very loosely so that the roots can breathe better. And we have another ceramic mount with another dehydrated orchid. I don't blame the nursery because I'm pretty sure the heat wave is to blame, but these ceramic mounts might not be the best at keeping the plants hydrated. We've had this orchid before, and at the time everyone warned us it's a difficult one, but I'm nothing if not stubborn. Good news is, it seems much bigger than last time and it's full of flower spikes. And after 24 hours of hydration, it's looking much better already. This is another one I'm trying to grow in a pot, only because I'm trying to keep mounts at a minimum. I was going to just use small bark, but the root system it came with was so small, I decided to wrap it in sphagnum, just so the plant would be less wobbly in the pot. And also has the added bonus of making it easier to stay hydrated. I'm really enjoying how they're packing small and loose orchids now. They're sending a pot filled with pillow fluff and the orchid sandwiched in there. It's not only safer, you get a free pot. This teeny tiny orchid left me completely puzzled, because I had no idea what I ordered that could be so small. It turned out to be the Amesiella I ordered, that is supposed to be 18 months from flowering according to the website. I just really didn't expect it to be so small. This genus is related to Vanda, and it seems to have its own particularities when it comes to culture. They say that they are temperamental, should only be repotted when growing, in the spring, should not touch the substrate other than with the roots. But she's unpotted right now, so she has to go in a pot either way, so we're finding a way to do this. Since she's so tiny, I picked one particularly big piece of bark and propped it on it. Then fixated the roots to it with long strands of sphagnum. It looks so cute just like this. Then I placed the whole thing into a very small pot with some smaller pieces of bark to hold it up. And if we look really closely, the stem of the plant isn't touching anything, but it still has the sphagnum to the roots to keep it hydrated. Hopefully this system will work. And next we have another tiny orchid. We have tried growing the Phalaenopsis lobi twice now, so this time we're trying again, but with one of the others in this type of Phalaenopsis, the parishii. It's still not blooming size, but it does look really nice. Everyone says that this is very easy to grow, but after my experiences with the lobi, I'll believe it when I see it. And of course it had to come with the roots in the worst possible position to put it in a pot. Well, at least it's not a ceramic mound. It was a bit fiddly to coax the upturned roots into the pot, but I think in the end it looks pretty good. I was able to leave it a bit raised over a piece of bark since it does like to be mounted, but it still has a little bit of sphagnum in there. We failed miserably the last time we tried to get jewel orchids, but I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. So here we have what to me is the most impressive looking of them all, the Macodes petola. And seeing the way that the leaves shimmer, completely worth trying it again. This one also said it was supposed to be 12 months from flowering, but I don't think that's a bad thing, considering that I read that they die off after flowering. Leaving behind new shoots, of course, but still. It came a little bit unpotted, but I was planning on potting it in our own mix either way. It looks like Schwerter uses the exact same mix as we do. In this case, fine bark, perlite, and cut sphagnum. I had some trouble centering the plant in the pot, especially being careful to not knock out that little baby you can see over there. I couldn't do a Schwerter order without getting another Tolumnia. They have so many on their catalog. I started the shopping trip, if you will, with 3 or 4 in the cart, but ended up deleting them for other more enticing species. But I could see myself slowly end up with quite a few of these. The ones I already have bring me so much joy every time they bloom. Schwerter always has them shoved in these little net pots, and it really is a nuisance to push the roots down into a normal pot with substrate. I had to soak pretty much the whole plant to make the roots more pliable, but it also had the advantage of showing me that a lot of them weren't really good anymore. After cutting off all the dead tips, it ended up being easier than usual to coax the roots into a normal pot. This Phalaenopsis I was actually expecting to be smaller, because I bought it 2 years from flowering, but somehow it came as a pretty good size, considering neither of the parents are very big. I have been trying to get all the Phalaenopsis Finley hybrids I can, because 2 of my favorite orchids of all time are his primary hybrids. So I just couldn't resist this one, even this young. Schwerter listed this for sale as just Phalaenopsis crossed with Finley, but from what I can tell this cross is already registered. It's called Phalaenopsis Freckle Baby. I mean, how could I not get it? I absolutely hate that most nurseries have their Phalaenopsis in full sphagnum. It makes it very easy to unpot, but I find that they always sulk, at least a little bit, while they're adapting to bark. To try and prevent that, I'm gonna add quite a bit of sphagnum to the pot, both to ease the adaptation and because she's still a seedling. This orchid came in gorgeous condition, so I'm not worried about it at all. This one I added last minute. Even though it's a little more expensive than I usually pay for Bulbophyllums, I couldn't resist. I'd been eyeing this one for a while now, and I just had to pull the trigger. Aren't the flowers amazing looking? I was really surprised that they sent it in actual tree bark. It's maybe coconut shell? I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a bit of a bizarre setup. I'm also not loving the look of these markings on the leaves. I've taken some pictures in case I need to contact the nursery, and I'm gonna try and keep a close eye on these blemishes. Now, taking this orchid from that coconut shell took forever. And I damaged so many of the roots. At some point, I just had to declare it good enough, clean enough, and just move on. Other than that, I placed it in self-watering and I hope for the best. But how weird was that coconut husk little mount pot setup? And next we have another Bulbophyllum. After this order, I'm gonna have to clear another shelf just for the bulbos. I have to admit, I got this one just because it was at a great price. But it's also a really cute small Bulbophyllum. I'll have to wait a little bit for it to flower, but I really enjoy watching Bulbophyllums grow, so that's not a problem for me. It was listed with that AFF in the name, which means affinis, and from what I read, it means that it might not be the actual species, but something closely related or hybridized with it. To make matters more complicated, beyond this name, there's other orchids with different names that are considered very similar species, or the same as this one with different color forms, and I really can't make heads or tails of this on the internet, so I'm just gonna consider this my little question mark orchid. It came potted in pretty much pure sphagnum, with those little pebbles Schwerter always adds to the Bulbophyllums. I tried to keep the plant as tight as it came as soon as I realized this is one of those that has a spread out type of rhizome, and that it came very well wrapped up in that tiny pot. It's of course also going into self-watering, and it could just barely fit into one of the smaller pots. I'm sure when this one gets closer to flowering size, it will need to go on a proper big bowl. But for now, as a seedling, it doesn't take much space. Schwerter also has a lot of meristem mini-cattleyas, so I had to pick at least one. I had this one years and years ago, but it got an infection and died pretty quickly. I wanted to try it again because the pink with the bright yellow, it's such an unusual combination that to me it would be garish in any other circumstance, but in a flower I kinda like it. As with all cattleyas, it's a bit fiddly to get all the bark out without damaging the roots. I ended up removing the back bulbs because they were just too low. Otherwise, this was a very straightforward repot, and the orchid looks really good. With my big Phalaenopsis collection, this is one of the few species that I still wanted, and I have for years, but it's not the easiest to find. It arrived bare root and so incredibly dehydrated. I was a little concerned. But then it perked up after some water, and I read that dark and floppy leaves like this in this species can be a sign of low light, so I'm feeling better about it. The reason I'm worrying about this one more than the others is that I don't seem to do well with this type of Phalaenopsis. Those small species that are sometimes deciduous but always finicky. I just love them so much, I keep trying. Most people seem to grow these mounted, but I did read they can be potted. I was unsure on what substrate to use, so I did the same as with the Phalaenopsis parishii and used larger bark, strategically placed sphagnum, and made sure to leave the plant a bit propped up to mimic the situation you get when they're mounted. Now we have one of the reasons I was so excited for this order. Other than to get that Venda basket, of course, that's why I did the order. This is my first Habenaria ever, and it's one of the most beautiful orchids I've ever seen. I mean, it's not exactly the Medusa, which I have seen live, but from what I can tell, this species is very similar to the Medusa, but a bit smaller, so win-win. I think the corm came a bit unburied, but I'm not sure about going anywhere near repotting it when it's mid its growing season, so I'm gonna try and cover it up the best I can, and leave the repot for next year. I ended up using the leftover substrate from repotting the Macodes to cover up the exposed corm. I swear, when I was considering buying this Habenaria instead of other species they had for sale, I read this was a good beginner species. But now that I'm investigating its cultivation a bit further, all I read is how hard this one is. I'll have to try my best, I guess. If you have any Habenaria growing tips, please give them to me. I have a lot of Angrecoids that are doing really well, so I decided to get my first Mystacidium. I bought it supposedly flowering size, but looking at this orchid, I'd say I'll still have to wait a while. It comes, as you can see, bare root, but with really long roots. And after some more detailed research, that seems to be one of the reasons people say it has to be mounted. I really don't want to do that, so that stubborn streak is coming out and I'm gonna find a way to put this in a pot. But of course that still respects that quick drying cycle that everyone says this plant needs. For that, it took a bit of fiddling, but I ended up using large bark, a pot with lots of ventilation holes, and I also left the orchid propped up a bit on top of the bark, like I've been doing with a lot of orchids on this order that people say need to be mounted. I'll let you know if it works out. Getting this orchid out of the box was an exercise of sheer stupidity by the both of us. First, we noticed there were 2 name tags. Silly shorter people, they put 2 tags on this. Then there were 2 little plantlets inside the packet. Wow, aren't they nice? They must have sent 2 because they're just so tiny. The possibility that I had made a mistake and ordered the same plant twice didn't even cross my mind, until I was going through the invoice to record this video. So yeah, I ordered 2 seedlings instead of 1. Since the theme for this order seems to be from taking risks to just sheer hubris, I got myself my first Sophronitis type Cattleya. These are notorious for being heat intolerant and just finicky in general. Of all of them, this one seems to be the easiest, so my cockiness didn't go as far as to get one of those with a deep red color that really like to grow in cool temperatures. The potting of this was pretty straightforward. We decided to use a small grade of bark since they are still seedlings. The only difficulty is holding these 2 tiny things while pouring in the bark. And that was my gigantic orchid order. I mean, basket order. This was for the basket. I hope you made it through the video. It really was a long one this time, but I hadn't made an order from Schwerter for so long, and there were so many orchids on my wish list, I decided to treat myself to a late birthday gift. I also didn't remember how much work it is to repot so many orchids at once, and it took me 2 days to get through them. I hope you enjoyed taking care of them with me. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to sponsor Bad Orchid Decisions, we also have a super thanks button that it's active for tips. We'll see you again next week for another video. Goodbye.